Good to go, bud.
YouTube has been started, Russ. You good to go?
Here we go.
You're going to stand up?
Mr. Chairman, we are live.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, February 22nd, 2022 Town of Litchfield Board of Selectmen meeting. The board has just come out of a paperwork review. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, justice for all.
The first item we have this evening is the review and approval of consent items. We have the account payable manifest of February 16th, 2021 in the sum of $28,491.75 and of February 23rd, 2021 in the sum of $103,507.61. We have a payroll manifest of February 18th of 2021 in the sum of $59,279.52 and of February 25th, 2021 in the sum of $58,133.64. We have the January 2021 Treasurer's Reconciliation. We have abatement in the sum of $1,071.46. We have a timber tax for $198.46. We have a land use change tax of $16,050. Are there any items members would like to have removed from consent? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Leary.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Lynch. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch,
Aye.
Ms. Queenan?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 4-0-0. Is there any other business members would like to add this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we postpone voting on the minutes from the last meeting because there's some changes that need to be made to them.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Leary.
I'll second it.
We have a second by Mr. Lynch. Any discussion?
Mr. LaSalle's has joined us.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle's,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch,
Aye.
Ms. Queenan?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 5-0-0. Public input will occur no earlier than 6:45 p.m. The first item of business is Jason Brennan, State Forest Trail Update and New Trails Concept. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, just real quick introduction. I think Jason, we all know Mr. Brennan's working with other citizen volunteers and investigating, trying to get the Captain Loops Trail back in place. But he's also been working on some conceptual trail layouts on town-owned property that surrounds the state forest. So he had reached out to me to see if he could meet with the Board of Selectmen to discuss these two issues, give an update on the state forest trail, and also to introduce this concept of building some new trails on town-owned property. Jason will be fully prepared with the slideshows and everything to brief the board on this subject matter.
Yep. All right.
All right, welcome.
Yep. Thank you very much, Troy and the board. We are glad to be here tonight. We've got three quick things to talk to you about. Number one, we'll give you an update on our conversations with the state. Number two, we'll talk briefly about some of the research we've done on ownership of lands around the state forest. And number three, we'll talk about our brief ideas for expanding a couple of trails and improving some existing trails. So with me here tonight is Rob Terry and Andy Ruggles, and we're going to tag team on this. I'm going to turn it over to Rob Terry.
Thank you, Jason. Yes, board members, appreciate you taking the time to give you an update on the Litchfield State Forest. Just real quick, from what we've seen previously, we had two trails that got closed down. Road Trail, which is called Flint Bridges, and then Calvin Loop, which was a long-standing trail that looked out over the swamp area out towards the north of Litchfield State Forest. Next slide, please. So recap, I think you've already seen this with regards to closures from the state. It essentially came down to buckling down on the legal trail building, improper wetland crossing. There were some makeshift bridges using a bunch of logs, etc., improper signage and trail markings, and then impact to wildlife. So the state came in, did a pretty good job of explaining their concerns and the impact to the area as a result of this trail. So going forward, we looked to kind of investigate how we would go about reopening a trail and getting that process formalized, cross the T's, dot the I's. And this essentially is the update that we have to date from the state. And most of this is coming from Jesse Frieden Powers, who is the volunteer program manager for the state. And it essentially boils down to a petition for trail opening, and you must be part of the state's trail volunteer program. That's to even start the process. And then, unfortunately, for a private group to be part of the trail volunteer program, you must be a nonprofit 501c and carry 1 million insurance, for instance, and then I guess 2 million aggregate, which is pretty significant from a small group that's trying to establish a presence in the Litchfield State Forest. Once accepted, you must then submit a work plan to the state, which details the group's plans for improvements to include what happened in previous years, updates to additional trails, and then just general maintenance. Right? After you have that work plan submitted, then you work with the volunteer program manager and the site lead, which we've met with Billy Quinones, who works with the state as the land manager. And that's how you can bring forward new trails to get proposed and ultimately reviewed. At this point, we're kind of trying to determine if a town entity like Board of Selectmen or other entities can submit a work plan and petition for reopening. Unfortunately, this seems to be a first for the state, and they didn't have a direct answer, but Jesse has confirmed that she'll look into it and get back to us. So ultimately, our goal is to try and regain some of that 40% reduction in Litchfield State Forest and be able to reuse those trails. Next slide, please.
I think that's, any questions on that? So that's the update from the state. I think the long and the short of it is that we're in a holding pattern. And because the trails were shut down, in order to get them reopened, you've got to go through this whole process. So we're really in a holding pattern right now. And quite frankly, it's a little bit frustrating because had there been communication from the beginning between the state and the town, maybe you could have gotten the people together at the table and maybe the outcome wouldn't have been any different, but at least you would have had some dialogue. And I think the same would go for if the Conservation Commission would have been to talk to the Board of Selectmen as well. We might have been able to get all the parties to the table and figure it out ahead of time. So now we've got to jump through a bunch of hoops to get to the table. So that's where we're at right now.
I completely agree, Jay. I mean, it would have been nice to have the conversation up front. Please keep us informed if the town entity can somehow submit a work plan, because if so, I'm sure the board would be, willing to at least look at the Calvin Loop, because according to a couple of the members who have been in town forever, they said that trail has been here forever. It'd be nice to get that reinstated for the citizens to use.
Absolutely, thank you.
Jason, do you want me to reach out to the state to see if we as a town entity can apply and not be classified as that volunteer private group?
Jason, you still on the phone?
Can you hear me now?
Just barely.
Can you hear me?
Yep, much better.
Jason?
Yeah,
I knew it was
yeah.
gonna happen.
Jason, Troy here. So do you want me to reach out to the state to see if the town can in fact apply and submit a work plan, if they would consider that? I know that the state's probably I'm sure their current practice is that they're working with these nonprofit private groups that are well organized and have the large insurance policies. I don't know if they've worked directly with towns and we'd be considered, an eligible applicant.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can now. Yep.
All right, sorry about that. The dreaded double mute. I think I'll defer to Rob on that. He's been talking to the state, but I assume that to me, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, that seems very reasonable. Right now, we're trying to engage, like I said, with Jesse, who's the volunteer program manager. I don't think there would be any issue with the board going and trying to open that dialogue as well, right? The more the better, I think, in that situation.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll reach out and make that initial contact to get an answer on that subject matter. And the one thing that I just wanted to, make sure everyone's aware, it occurred to me that when we had our discussions with the state and anyone at home watching these meetings, I don't think anyone knows who's done the work on these trails. They talked about the Rogue Trail. And in fact, I don't want anyone out there assuming that these were Litchfield residents or any organized group here in Litchfield that did that. I'm not aware that's the case. And it very well may have been non-residents, a group of just individuals that went out and, not knowing that they were doing anything wrong, went out and constructed these trails, at least the Two Bridges Trail. So, but I don't know if that's been stated yet, and anyone following this, understanding that the town of Litchfield's, we've had a trail in our community removed, and because the state, is saying a trail was constructed, and I don't know if they just feel the town of Litchfield residents did this or a Litchfield group.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
And-
that is a very valid point. And to that end, I even asked the question most recently to the program manager, like, well, who maintains the trails today, right? She brought up that there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining trails, but I got the impression that there was nobody out there to begin with, and this was something that got caught recently, as opposed to like 5 or 10 years ago. I have not seen a response back to that yet, but to your point, I think we should be very upfront about it and state that we don't believe it was potentially Litchfield residents going out and being rogue, and more so we're trying to make it more legitimate going forward.
Yep.
So
All right,
Troy, if you could reach out, that'd be great.
Shall I continue?
Continue.
Okay, part 2 of 3 of the presentation. So in an effort to determine who owns land around the Litchfield State Forest so that we can figure out as a group who to talk to when it comes to trail improvements or expansion, we put together or with the help of Andy Ruggles, who's on the phone, we did some deed research of all the pieces of property around the Litchfield State Forest, and we basically came up with a map that shows the following. So all the land around the Litchfield State Forest is kind of highlighted on the map over here. The ones that have a T in them, colored red, are owned by the town according to the deed. And the ones with the purple P are private owned pieces of property that surround the Litchfield State Forest. To dive into this a little bit deeper, and specifically looking at the properties owned by the town, we went and pulled all of the deeds of the town-owned pieces of property and read through all of the deeds. In short, what it appears is that parcels number 1, 5, and 6, which there's 1, There's 5, which we're going to be talking about in a minute. And there's 6 right there. All appeared to have been deeded to the town of Litchfield, quote unquote, deeded to the town of Litchfield as a result of tax liens. And then parcels number 2, 3, and 4, which is right here, this guy right there, and this guy right there, they're contiguous, were granted to the town of Litchfield by a citizen of the town of Litchfield with some covenants associated with them. And the primary covenant on this deed, so these 2, 3, and 4 are covered under one deed document. And the long and the short of it is this land was granted to the town of Litchfield, New Hampshire, not the Rec Commission, not the Conservation Commission, not any other agency, to the town of Litchfield, New Hampshire. And the primary covenant on it is that, if you see in red at the bottom of the screen, it basically says that this piece of property is was provided partially for recreational use. Members of the public shall have access to private property for passive outdoor recreation. And there's a whole list of things in there that say that trails can be built and little bridges can be built if it relates to trails. And that's all included in the deed. There is a stipulation in this deed that even though the property is owned by the town of Litchfield, there is a stipulation in the deed that says something to the effect that if there are improvements made on these pieces of property, that they shall be reviewed by the Conservation Commission. And there's wording on that in the deed. We then provided this listing of deeds over to the town just for their review and to Troy to make sure that we didn't get anything wrong. And the long and the short of it is we put together a package that shows a map of the entire area with deed references to every single piece of property so that we can use these to help us figure out who to contact and who we have to deal with when it comes to trail improvements. But the long and the short of it is, after this research, we think, at least based on what the deeds say, is that all those pieces of property surrounding the Litchfield State Forest are owned by, quote unquote, the town of Litchfield, New Hampshire. And so that's what we've got on that. And so we gave that over to Troy, and hopefully we can have Troy or folks at the town either confirm or deny that. So that's where we stand there.
That's true. Okay, thank you. That was a lot of great work you guys did for us.
And Troy, do you have any comment on that at all?
I just wanted to share that I think, and I talked to Jason about this, that I think it's important that the town generate a master list of all town property, and we have it identify who's responsible for the management of it. So there's definitely property that the Recreation Commission has direct management authority over, the Conservation Commission, and I think you'll find that most of the land in town is really the Board of Selectmen. And that it becomes very clear when people are proposing to do work on this town-owned property, who are the right groups to go to discuss plans for building a river access park or a trail. So I'm working. I kind of took some of the information Jason gave and worked with staff. We'll be putting together a document with the ultimate goal of getting something finalized so that we can have public input from conservation, recreation, and the general public, make sure we have everything accurate and adopt it. And you'll see that there's already a master list in the town report, but just add a few more columns so that each year it's always in the annual town report and it's very clear who's got management authority over those parcels. So that's, and you know, I think that's important, not just for this effort that we're talking about now, but just going forward in the future. There's always a question of who's responsible for the management of this land. We had that issue come up at Parker Park when the tree fell in the river this spring. And so it comes up all the time.
Okay. And then lastly, I'm going to turn it over to Andy Ruggles, and he's going to talk about options for new trails and improving a couple of trails out there.
Hi there, this is Andy Ruggles. Thank you for signing on with us tonight to go over some options for well, so kind of what we've been looking at, pitch some ideas to you guys on what we're kind of thinking we would like to do if possible. As you can see on this map here, there's really 3 areas that we're focusing on at this point. The first is kind of on the bottom right of the screen. It's a new single track on the town lot. It would just loop out through there and tie right back onto that Boulder Dash trail. The second piece is kind of in the middle of the property. And what we would like to do there is essentially restore connection between 2 dead-end trails. So hopefully we would have another loop out through there. And, you know, kind of the whole idea of this is, you know, with the Calvin Loop shutting down, we're trying to just get more, trying to make up for lost mileage out there, as well as provide a couple other loop options for when you're actually walking through the woods. So you're not walking the same trail every time you go out there. Finally, the third one is a trail that would divert an existing trail away from the water tower. I don't know if you guys have ever been up there, but when you get up to the top of the hill, there's kind of a maze of trails and you can kind of get lost up there a little bit. So what we'd like to do is try to cut out some of that grade and maybe run something around, you know, pick a contour elevation, kind of follow it around the hill on that trail there. So these are the 3 main areas. Next slide.
Oh,
Oh, we good?
so, yeah, I went to the next slide. You're good. Yep.
Okay. So this is the map that the state used, and just kind of showing sensitive areas in the state forest and beyond. Anything in red, deep reds, are areas that, you know, low-lying wetlands that are, you know, pretty much unpassable. And they use the lighter shades and the bluer shades as properties that are, or areas that are less prone to, you know, I forget the word for it here, but less sensitive, less environmentally sensitive. As you can see, the 3 areas that we were kind of looking at are all in the low to no, you know, sensitivity areas. And that's basically it on that one.
And then this is the last slide.
So this is a picture up on the Boulder Dash Trail. I actually took it this fall. I took a walk out there just to check it out. And as you can see, it's pretty open out there. There, you know, you could certainly pick trails out, you know, ways out through there that would be very low impact. You could snake down through the trees, you know, we literally have to cut, you know, a couple branches off on either side just to get something down through there. We want to try to follow the best natural path, so that we're not cutting down 6-inch trees, and, you know, we want to just, you know, be as minimally impactful as possible. We intend to use hand tools and clippers, no tree cutting or excavation, and like I said before, just minimal impact. Try to stay away from the wet areas. You know, anything we can do to make it, you know, easy and clean. So just an example of one of the trails. This is actually the Calvin Loop that they shut down. You can just see how it snakes down through there. So again, no tree cutting, little impact, and this is a final map here. Like to just make it a single track, which are usually about, you know, 3 feet wide, something to walk. Maybe you could pass another person. That's the trail itself. And then I anticipate clearing, you'd have to clear branches probably up to 6 feet, so you're not getting whacked in the face as you're walking down through there. And just again, we're just emphasizing the no major tree cutting. It's not like we're gonna go out there with a chainsaw and cut down, 12-inch maples. So, and that's basically it. Are there any questions?
So Andy, if you go back, excuse me, the trail number 2, you guys are taking a dead end trail and bringing it to a T. There looks to be another dead end trail right below there. Is there a reason why you're not trying to connect those two together?
Yeah, so if you go down there, Steve, it doesn't really show it real well on this map, but that's really, it's like dense wetland down there. You see where the blue wetland finger kind of comes up? Well,
Yep.
in reality, it really circles around and hits the end of that trail. And the only place to push a trail through is as close to that state forest line as possible. Just because if you go any closer to this, any farther south, it gets in that wet area really fast.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
That could be a dead end trail. Go down and look at the wetlands. Yeah.
Board, do we have any other comments or
in
questions?
the springtime.
Wow, just like to thank everybody for all the work you've done on this. It's really amazing what you've done. Hopefully we can help you get where you need to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, I see no issue cutting these trails based off of the map you overlaid that comes from the state. So in the sensitive areas, I mean, we're staying clearly away from them. So the impact should be minimal.
So I think, Troy, what we're just trying to figure out is what's the process that we have to go through. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right things. We're checking all the boxes, getting approvals, things like that. So, my question to you is really what process do we have to go through? To either get approved or denied or something in between.
These parcels here, the deed research we did, this is not on the land that required some conservation input.
So very good point. So this one right here that you see, trail number 1 is not on land that says conservation input. Trail number 3 is not on land that's asked for conservation input. Trail number 2 is, this piece right here is listed in the deed requiring conservation input. So the 3 ones requiring conservation input are this one right here with my red, this guy right here, and then this one right here. Those 3.
Trails being drafted up there, they already exist.
Correct.
So
Ones in green exist.
Yeah, so the only one we really need to get their input would be trail number 2.
So I think the board could just, based on this presentation this evening, I think the board could approve the layout of these trails and authorize the construction of them, subject to conservation's approval on, I'll call it trail number 2.
Well, are we asking for their input or their approval?
Well, like Troy, I think we need to investigate that deed and see exactly how the verbiage is within that deed, just so we as a board don't overstep.
Okay.
If we could get legal's input on what the deed states and what we need from conservation on trail number 2, I think that would behoove us to go do it. But I think we could take action on 1 and 2 and then make 2 contingent on conservation.
Review.
I agree. Yeah.
So what is the will of the board?
So if need be, we could cut a new trail that goes right along the state forest to connect those 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah, where 1 ends and 2 ends, we could go right along that border of the state forest and cut a new trail to connect those 2?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll take them right out of the paper.
But at that point, we'd have to go to the state, correct, in order to cut a trail along their property line.
Well, if we go on the property, but if we stay off of it, then we're not impacting wetlands, right?
but then would be in parcel number 2, which takes conservation.
Yeah, their input, yeah.
Yeah, so either way, we'll need the input. I think staying local is probably the easiest path than trying to make everybody go back through the state in order to get a new trail cut.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I make a motion, we approve the construction of trails number 1 and 3, and we approve the construction of trail 2, contingent on consultation with conservation.
we have a motion by Mr. LaSalle's.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Larry. Any further discussion?
Mr. Lynch, but that's okay.
Sorry, Mr. Lynch. It's hard to hear sometimes when you're remote.
They look alike.
You just hurt Bob's
My
feeling.
life, but never a Lynch.
Do we have any further discussion?
I won't go there.
All right, all those in favor, Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle's,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch,
Aye.
Ms. Queenan.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you very much, Jay and Rob and Andy, for all your efforts in this, and we look forward to seeing the new trails. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help out.
Thank you all very much. We
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Troy off the trail would hurt his bike.
Being that it is 7:02 p.m., I'd like to open it up to public input. Do we have any members of the public that would like to provide input this evening?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any members of the public joining tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Brunel. Hearing none, we will close public input. Next item is resignations. We have Master Patrol Officer Lang. We have Richard Penthamy, LCTV Manager, Kim Queenie, Planning Board Member. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I bring forward these 3 resignations to the board for formality of acceptance. We received unfortunate news from Chief Sergeant that he had received a letter of resignation from Master Patrol Officer Lang. She's been a tremendous officer for the department, and it's going to be a great loss, but I know that everyone wishes her well in her career endeavors. She's had a great opportunity to be able to work in a law enforcement officer closer to home. She'll be closer to family. So tough loss for us, but it's all good, for her. So Richard Penthany has been in town since the start, is my understanding. He and a couple other volunteers literally kind of built the cable system that we have today, our community television system. And it's been his baby. That's the way he's explained it to me. He moved out of Litchfield a few years ago, but still wanted to stay involved because he was involved in so much of the construction, the infrastructure that was required to make the system operate as it does today. And he's hit the point in time where he knows that it's time for him to step down, and that's why he has submitted his resignation. And Kim Queenan, we know that her effort to step up as an interim Board of Selectmen member creates a problem where we'd have 2 selectmen serving on the committee, so on the planning board. So now she's been appointed as the selectman's rep, but needs to step down as the citizens rep on the planning board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Before we get on with the motion to accept these, if you could kindly, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, send a letter to each one of these individuals and thank them for the years of service with the town of Litchfield, would greatly appreciate that.
I will do so.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion concerning the resignations?
I see Chief is on the board there. Does he have anything he wants to add with Ms. Lang?
Good evening, Ben.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Chairman also, and honorable board members. This was quite shocking to me,
It is a loss for our department. Rachel has been dedicated to the town of Litchfield for 6.5 years, and she's done a great job. She's become a great friend of mine, and she's made great connections with all members of our community, businesses, our senior community, our student population, and just well respected. She served as the association president, the union president. She was never afraid to take on a new role or a new obstacle. I can certify that she served this town in a manner that would make all of you very proud. It's going to be a very, very tough body to fill. I feel confident that we will do that, but we just wish her the absolute best moving forward to work for an agency where she's right close to home and can focus. We always say family first here at Litchfield PD, and that's what she's doing. So we wish her the best. We're going to miss her. We're still going to keep in touch with her, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to try to get her back. So.
Thank you, Chief. And I agree. She has been exceptional when it came to protecting and serving this community, and just what she did when there was an episode at the school, how she showed up and just played basketball with the kids to make all the children feel comfortable at GMS was above and beyond the call of duty. And it was fantastic to have her as part of our department for so many years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That
Color
was
guard,
the
too.
highlight of her career. I remember that incident specifically. I responded to the initial call. I was in a different role at that time, and Rachel had no concerns the next day when she was assigned to a security detail at GMS, but she took it to the next level. She made it about engagement with the children of the school, the teachers of the school, the employees of the school, and it was just something that was bad and something that made people feel uncomfortable really turned into a good thing. And I think it spoke highly of her character and the great relationship that we're going to continue to have with our school district. So thank you for mentioning that incident, Mr. Chairman.
You're most welcome, Chief. With that said, do we have a motion to accept the resignations?
I'll make the motion that we accept the resignation with the subject matter, the pen becomes the next color guard.
We have a motion by Mr. Lynch.
Second the motion.
We have a second. I'm not sure if that was Mr. LaSalle or Mr. Larry.
Yeah, we look alike, but it was me. LaSalle.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Larry,
Regretfully, aye.
Mr. LaSalle,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch,
Aye.
Ms. Queenan.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you to Master Patrol Officer Lang, Dick Pentheny, and Ms. Queenan for your years of service for the town. And Ms. Queenan, we hope to have you serving for many more years with us. Next, we have the appointment of Curtis Sampson for Planning Board member, term to expire 2022. Mr. Brown.
So with the resignation of Ms. Queenan, the planning board has come forward and recommended that we appoint Mr. Sampson as a full-time regular member. He currently serves as an alternate member on the planning board.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to accept Curtis Sampson as a full member to the planning board, expiring in 2022?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Lynch.
Second. Oh, Kim.
Okay, I'll
Kim
second
seconded.
We have a second by Ms. Queenan. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Larry,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch,
Aye.
Ms. Queenan.
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, Curtis, for coming forward to be a full member. The next item we have is LCTV management. Mr. Brown.
Okay, about 2 months ago, we were aware that Mr. Pentheny was considering stepping down as the manager of LCTV. But we also had some discussions with LCTV staff. They were under a lot of pressure due to the COVID pandemic, but overall just increased demand for their services for all the boards and committee coverages that we do. So we ended up having a meeting internally with some of the key management staff at LCTV. I had John Brunel there as the IT director and myself. There was some discussion about the future of LCTV and how we're going to try to meet the ever-changing needs of the department, but also recognizing that there would, in the future, there may be some changes that the board and this community may need to address. And one of those things is the contract renewal for our cable franchise agreement, which I understand is up for renewal this year. At least we'll start that conversation. And we all collectively agreed that it made sense that several steps needed to take place. One, Mr. Pentheny needed to decide if he was going to continue to be the manager or if he was going to step down. And he had indicated at that meeting that he would be stepping down. And he followed through on that as we just accepted his resignation this evening. And the second was that if Mr. Pentheny stepped down, what would LCTV's management look like? And we all came to an agreement at that meeting that it made sense that John Brunel, being the director of IT services, actually fill that vacant position of overall management. And we kind of put, if you're looking at, organizational chart, we put LCTV underneath IT, with John being the department head directly responsible for it. But we would still maintain, the LCTV operation as we know it today. We have Mr. Blanchett that is here doing more of the equipment maintenance. He's unfortunately had to be here operating cameras through the pandemic, but hopefully one day, he'll be able to step back behind the scenes and really just work with the equipment. And then you have Rob Fay, who's more production, and he's out there doing programs. And so you'd have those two middle management individuals doing what they do best, LCTV, but direct management responsibility being transferred to John Brunel under the IT department. So anyhow, what I don't know if the board's comfortable taking any action this evening, but we wanted to at least have this conversation and present it to the board as a concept, and hopefully it'll be endorsed by the Board of Selectmen to officially, transfer the LCTV underneath the IT department, overall management and direction given to John Brunel.
Board, what is your thoughts?
LCTV's all right with it? They don't have any issues with it? It's a good plan. It's a good plan? That's all I need to hear.
With the devil here. By going under John, what is John be looking for more compensation?
No, we had a conversation about this, and he's not looking at asking for any additional compensation. It's just really making sure we understand who's responsible ultimately for the overall operation of LCTV. There's a lot. I mean, obviously, you can tell that over the past years that these two entities have relied on each other, and they've really combined services. They're working more closely today than ever before. So it really comes down to efficiency and just improving communication between the two.
My personal opinion is I'm extremely comfortable with the organizational change because I see as more and more people in town are cutting the cord, we're going to have less and less funding for LCTV because it comes from a franchise charge from Comcast. Being that, it may almost morph into the fact, that I'm looking at it right now. It may be more of an avenue to get it onto social media, being YouTube, being Facebook Live, and so forth. And not knowing where the whole cable television network's going with more and more people cutting the cord, that I think it makes more sense that they're very much aligned with our IT department in town.
I have a question to that, Mr. Chair. You mentioned Facebook, YouTube. YouTube now, if I remember right, you can go on and see the meetings. Okay, all the way around. So you got two things going on. Your cable, channel 21 and 22, I think it is.
Yeah. And
not too many people, they are cutting that cord. We all know that. So the other people doing it, but still. I just want to make sure that, it stays in both locations until such time. Now, there are a lot of people who still like cable. Okay, instead of the multiple buttons you get today.
Oh, I think I can't speak for LCTV, but I believe they're going to use as many platforms as they can to get their media out there, as long as those platforms are available.
Okay.
Do we have any more discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept the new organizational changes for LCTV?
So
So,
moved.
second the motion?
So we have a motion by Mr. Leary, second by Mr. LaSalle's. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle's,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch,
Aye.
Ms. Queenan?
Aye.
I am also an aye. Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you to Mr. Brunel for taking service.
Thanks to Russ in the corner for giving us the thumbs up.
Russ is doing sign language from this side here.
Good job, Russ.
I just told Mr. Lynch he's number one.
So the next item we have is the 2022 deliberative session plans. Mr. Brown.
So we were apparently the school board had a conversation at their last meeting, and I was contacted by the administrative assistant on behalf of the school board, asking if we could begin a discussion about possibly planning for next year's deliberative session, a combined session, much like we did this year. So having either the school or town go first in the morning, and then having one or the other go in the afternoon. Thought process being that each year we would rotate who goes first and who goes second. So I did wanted to make sure you were aware that we were contacted by the school. Wanted to have you folks have the ability to have some conversation about it. But I also sent that email around to various stakeholders to kind of start getting some feedback. And the feedback's been interesting. There's definitely some support there for it, but there's also some caution that we need to be aware of. And some of the caution statements were things that, I weren't really thinking about, and we need to be aware of it. When you look at this year's deliberative session, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, attendance was extremely low. So we didn't spend a lot of time at the town or school deliberative sessions. I believe both school board and board of selectmen and budget committee, we all work together as a team. And I think the goal was not to have too many warrant articles on for both school and town. So the discussion was limited to pretty much, straightforward operating budget and the items that really couldn't wait another year. So, a normal year when there could be an issue like trying to discuss a bond approval for a new school or a police department. Those are the years who knows how long that first session could go. It could go 4 to 6 hours, and then you adjourn for half an hour and you go, on to your next deliberative session. So I thought that was a really good point the town clerk, tax collector brought out, because apparently this happened one time, and I think you guys went to 11 o'clock at night or something. It was a long day for all the voters, a long day for all the staff, employees, and elected officials overseeing the deliberative session. So no decision needs to be made tonight. I think that we need to wait for the elections to be over, know who our elected officials are, but something that if we're going to do it, consider it. Obviously, for planning purposes, that decision needs to be made pretty early, right after March.
I personally feel, let's hold and wait till this year goes by. It may change, like you said. If you're gonna deal with, you put up a bond issue for the school, that's gonna take a part of the day, the whole day, just about, if I remember it. I know Rich has seen that happen. So I think it's a great idea, but I think it's something that we can make each year. That decision based on the scope, instead of just trying it all the time. Each year is different.
I agree with Mr. Lynch. I mean, this year, I think it worked very well because there's no real polarizing or hot topics that were going to be on the warrant itself. There's some years the town has stuff, there's some years the school has, and it will go on. So, I thought this year went exceptionally well. I even really liked the venue of the gymnasium. I thought it was a much more quainter feeling. I think you could hear people better. But I know some people sitting in the bleachers said it wasn't as comfortable as being in the auditorium. So, I think it's going to be one of those year by year basis we're going to have to look at and see, what's on the warrant in order to make this decision on which way to go.
The idea has a lot of merit. I think waiting and seeing. We're gonna have, I think next year the school's gonna probably have 2 contracts, if I'm not getting my years wrong. And then buildings. I mean, there's gonna be some things coming down the pipe.
Yeah, I think next year they're going to have some facility funding also that they're going to be looking for. So I think they're going to have 3 issues on their warrant, which are going to take up some discussion.
Yeah.
And some tax dollars.
But I do like the concept. I mean, I think it went off very well this year. I think it worked well for all the citizens. I think it worked great for the town going through the pandemic and from a PPE standpoint, only setting up once, LCTV only having to go out and get engaged once and setting up equipment. So there was a lot of positive merits for it this year.
And we have thanks the school for allowing it to happen over there. It was very nice setup. They did a great job setting it up. Keeping
It was
safe.
fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. Moderator Byron and, assistant moderator
Very
Perry did a really good job getting that whole thing put up for us.
Glad to see them.
So this will be back on the agenda after March. But yeah, as you can see, there's some real positive reasons for combining, and there's just some other areas of caution.
Those bleachers are not the most comfortable places to sit for people who have to crawl up and who are older.
I think the venue, the assumption was that the venue would move back to the auditorium.
I think so. They have cushions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown. We had no items removed from consent. Next, we have the administrator report. Mr. Brown.
All right, just a couple of things to report. Most importantly, the Pat Jewett Awards ceremony, March 1st. We had probably back around Thanksgiving time. Laura Gandia, who chairs the effort, had reached out to the board to make sure we were on board that we do Monday, March 1st, which happens to be, if I got this right, Pat Jewett's birthday. So that'll be a week from today. And it would be a virtual, Laura's going to be working on it. I'm sure that we'll have selectmen participating in it, but it's going to be a virtual ceremony. So one of the things that the committee just went through the nominations, and this year there was no selection for a recipient.
Correct.
The nominations were submitted just, in looking at everything, it didn't seem to fit the legacy that Pat Jewett Award has in terms of volunteerism on town boards, school boards. And so, for the first time, there is not a recipient this year, but with the passing of Miss Jewett in 2020, I think it's a good time to still have the virtual ceremony and reminisce about everything that the Pat Jewett Award stands for. So stay tuned. We'll communicate, let you all, the board, know about the plans for next Monday night. I also want to let you know that the voter guide, we've got the voter guide out there. So we've been working with the school. I gotta thank Michelle Flynn. She's done all the planning and coordinating with the printers and the mailing company. So the guides out there electronically. It'll also be mailed out to every household in our town. I believe it's going out this week. So, and then I just wanted to recognize, I think we did this last week, but if we didn't, I just wanted to recognize the highway crew. They're really doing a great job. And I, talking with the road agent Brown, and this year the crew that they have is experienced. They've come back. I think we only lost one operator last year, so you're starting to get a crew now that has got 1 or 2 years of experience behind them. We've been able. Some of the private contractors have purchased newer equipment, and of course, we've been updating our equipment. So things are really working for them. It's not an easy task. Trying to learn the operation without years of training and experience behind you. So we kind of lost a lot of equipment and experienced operators about 3 years ago, and it took us a while to rebuild. But I'm very pleased with the work that they're doing today. Just wanted to shout out.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. Next, we have Selectmen reports. Ms. Queenan.
Let's see. The planning board meets Tuesday, March 2nd, 7 p.m. Heritage Commission meets Tuesday, March 9th, which is a voting day, so it probably will be postponed till April 13th. National Regional Planning Commission will meet Wednesday, March 17th, 2021 for the commissioners, and the meeting information can be found on their website.
Okay, thank you. I have no report for the Rec Commission. We have a meeting tomorrow evening. Mr. Leary.
Nothing to report on the Budget Committee, but kind of a public service reminder for people, or announcement, or so to be. There's been a lot of complaints in town about people being overcharged with oil deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something posted on the What's Up page and a few other venues, and I had a couple of phone calls. So buyer beware. If you think your oil bill is too high or your propane bill, call a competitor, get a competing price, and then a lot of times you can call and get that price changed. And if it's a pattern, then maybe you think about a new oil company or a new gas company. But definitely don't be afraid to ask.
Is it?
$3.30, I think, is what somebody was being charged, and I've seen on the boards driving by, $2.70, $2.69. It usually runs close to where diesel is.
Is it a problem with the price, or they're getting shorted on the amount?
Price.
Just price.
Just price.
And for fuel oil as well as propane?
Fuel oil is what I've been
Fuel
hearing
oil.
most of.
That's what I got.
Won't mention names.
Okay, Mr. Leary, thank you. Mr. Lynch.
I'm quiet. Hard to believe in it.
Mark this date. Make a motion. We dedicate this as a town
I
holiday.
believe I'm supposed to be at the conservation, but I'm not sure.
Yes, you are a rep at Conservation. I believe their next meeting is next Thursday evening.
Oh, beautiful.
Not this week, a week from this Thursday, I believe is the next one.
Was that March 3rd? No.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, it sounds right. Right, Mr. LaSalle's.
Yes, the Heritage Commission did have a meeting here since our last selectmen's meeting. I think it was like the day after our last selectmen's meeting, right, Kim?
I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I took the minutes.
But
Let me
do
look it
we, since we have two selectmen on the Heritage Commission and Kim is the chair, are you the chairman now?
Yes.
What do we want to do? Do we need to do something about that?
We do, and I did receive correspondence from our legal counsel that recommended, even though there's nothing in the law that actually prohibits having two selectmen serve on the Heritage Commission, they highly recommend that you only have one, no more than one selectman. And the reason being that, you know, a Heritage Commission is a board where you want diversity, you want citizen involvement, and if you start having representation from too much of one entity, like a board of selectmen, if you had 2 or 3 selectmen on the Heritage Commission, you could find yourself really not having an effective board that's really representing different, you know, viewpoints. So
What do we do?
I think for the time being, let's keep it status quo until the outcome of the March 9th elections. And based on that, we can look at, you know, what we want to do with all the boards and commissions and, you know, who could be part of it and who's not part of it and who takes on what responsibility.
I concur with that because one, they're not gonna meet the Heritage Commission because it's the same day as the election. So, yeah,
Correct.
you know, it's
Yeah.
gonna be like that. So it just makes sense to hold off till we see who's new here with us.
That was my thought. All right, thank you, everyone. Seeing we have no other business that was added this evening, we do have one other item of business this evening. It's a non-public session under RSA 91A:32A, employee compensation, and RSA 91A:32C, reputation. We will only come out of non-public to adjourn the meeting or to take action on anything that could have come up in non-public. Do we have a motion to go into non-public?
So move.
We have a motion by Mr. LaSalle's. Roll call, Mr. Leary.
Do we need a second?
We can if you wish. I don't think we need one, but, all right. So we have a second. Roll call vote, Mr. Leary,
Aye.
Mr. LaSalle's,
Aye.
Mr. Lynch.
Aye.
Ms. Queenan.
Aye.
I am also an aye. It's 5-0-0. We are now in non-public. Thank you for everyone for tuning in this evening and be well.
Bye, Ben.
Buyer beware.
Members.
Steve,
Go
I
tuck
just
your
stopped
kids
the stream. I made you a host and Russell leave
Thank
the
you.
room. As soon as everybody's out, waiting for Matt to drop, I'll lock the room so it'll just be you guys and I'll drop.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
Have a nice. You passed the paint with the pigmentation to me.
Hey, can you still hear and see the room, Steve?
Yes, we can.
I can. Yep.
Good, thanks.
All right, Steve, I've locked the room. Like I said, the town hall and yourself are hosts. So I'm going to drop. The meeting should stay on.
All right. Thanks, John. Be well.
You'll be well.